Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tradition's Going Vertical podcast. I'm Mike Greenlay, your host, along with Erik Hendrikson, our co-host. Erik is the president of Tradition Mortgage, and our special guest today is Brad Carlson. He's a senior VP and head of operations for Tradition Mortgage, and today our topic's going to be the discussion of office space, office personnel, getting people back to work, getting people in different workspaces, wherever that may be. And Erik, I'd like to start with you. I think the key word for the past year, maybe year and a half, has been adapt. And I think that I would like you to address how Tradition Mortgage has found a way to adapt to the many challenges that we've all seen in a year and a half.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. This is such an interesting topic. It's hard to open up a newspaper or turn on, the business news and not hear about how companies are grappling with and trying to understand their workforces and where they put them. Are they working remote? Are they working from anywhere? Are they coming back into the office? If so, how many days? There's really no playbook written, and it's kind of like, once the genie's out of the bottle and people have the flexibility, it's really hard to bring people back into a very, very structured environment, for an entire work week. Mm-hmm. And for us at Tradition Mortgage, it was really an interesting experience that we went through back last year in, mid-March, when the pandemic really ramped up and the emergency orders went out from the state of Minnesota. We, in the span of a 48-hour time period, pretty much pushed 90% of our workforce remote. And we were just under 100 people, so it was a pretty significant endeavor, to equip them with the monitors and computers and oftentimes people, desks and chairs even, to get them at home. And that was out of necessity, out of requirement. Now, we're very fortunate in the mortgage industry that it is fairly electronic already, and people do have flexibility to kind of work from anywhere or work from home periodically. For our sales staff, the operations staff, for the most part, we've always had in the office. So there have been some discussions about potentially allowing a little more flexibility. So we were kind of forced into action a lot more quickly ahead of schedule, like a lot of companies. Mm-hmm. But now it's opened up as the pandemic's receded. Now we're looking at, what kind of productivity we saw out of this, and just cutting down on commute times and other kind of work-life balance elements that really sprung out of it. That now we're kind of trying to decide, what that right mix is. And here at Tradition Companies, we have 8 different operating companies, and each one is a little bit different as far as the requirement for people to be in a physical office space or out at a job site.
Mm-hmm. So, Brad, as operations are concerned, they tell us a little bit about whether that requires more in-person or more people in a smaller area than maybe sales, because I think people agree that sales can be done from many different areas. But tell me about your operations area and how you handle that whole situation.
Yeah, like Erik had mentioned, on the sales side of things, it's a little bit easier to have that flexibility to allow people to work remotely while also in the office. On the operations side, it was a different animal that we had to deal with on that side, where simply things like the IT challenges of physically being next to printers, being next to the equipment that the operations staff needed, really limited that flexibility to work remotely. So for us, it was setting up systems, providing some of the operations staff that flexibility to work from home, but then also making sure that the operations people that absolutely had to be in the office had the tools and the necessary equipment for them to do their job. So those challenges were definitely different. And for us, it like Erik had mentioned, we overcame those challenges. We learned a lot about ourselves during this transition, and we learned ultimately how flexible we can be. And that's only going to help us going forward as we continue to grow and potentially not need to continue to take on office space. So,
one of the things that we're doing right now, actually, we're having this podcast, we're hosting it out of a newly renovated office here in Spirit of Branson Farms, where Tradition Mortgage and the operations department call home. And it's a beautiful setting. And a lot of people would say, hey, Erik, are you trying to entice your workers back? Because it's such a beautiful space, it would make people want to come back physically to work. But I know there's other reasons for making this a better environment. But tell us a little bit about the whole renovation process, because it's not just here at Spirit. You're doing it at many of your locations. But go through some of that for us.
Well, to be honest, you're correct. There's no doubt about it. It's a new universe, and we looked at our office environments and really kind of stepped back and said, okay, is this, when somebody's coming in and maybe they're not coming in as often, what's their experience when they come into the office? Is it just a cube farm? Is it just very utilitarian? Is that going to create kind of the positive, energy levels that we want? And we kind of looked at it and said, we can do better than this. And because there are employees of our company that have been incredibly productive working from home, and their position and their tenure in the company, their experience level does allow for them that autonomy. We're like, those individuals are not going to be back in the office full time ever again. But when they come back in, what are they going to experience? And we decided, we're going to spend money and effort to really make a great environment where they come in and they enjoy it. It's almost I don't want to say a treat, but kind of a special experience. We look forward to it. It's a great area. It's very conducive to productivity. When our staff comes in, it's going to be training sessions. Is it set up where we can do, company training sessions where we're going to have the IT and the conference tables and the training rooms, and really make it a neat space, get that collaboration, because ultimately that those informal conversations and other things when people are together, there's a lot of benefit to that. And that's, I think, all of us that are in leadership positions of various companies out there they're weighing short-term and long-term. Short-term, somebody's set up, they have the high-speed internet, they have the dual monitors, the high-speed computer, they're working at home, they're not being interrupted, they're incredibly productive. They can start early, work late, go for a walk over the lunch hour, do what they want, pick up kids quick. They're getting a tremendous amount of work done, working remotely. Certainly they can pick up the phone, they can talk to a fellow employee, they can send emails, but you're not getting those kind of random yet beneficial conversations down the hallway or going to the break room or just popping into an office. So short-term, undeniable productivity is greater than anyone would have expected. They were kind of afraid, I think, that, hey, if we're not overseeing our employees or not in the office, how do we make sure they're working? How do we make sure they're productive? Mm-hmm. Well, you get good employees and they know what their job is, they do it. That's just proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. The longer term element of it is, are we going to miss out on some of those, the connectivity of relationships? Are we going to miss out on just those informal learning experiences? How are we going to be able to track that to see if we're maybe slipping because of those elements? And for us, we're making, a compromise, saying we don't want to bring people back in on a more frequent basis and they feel is conducive to their work. But we're going to bring them back in for structured opportunities to train and do things and be intentional about it. Intentional. So, kind of almost manufacture a little bit of those opportunities for informal conversation, but do it on a frequency that doesn't disrupt people's lives and doesn't feel like they're chained to a desk or they're kind of working the grind again.
And Brad, Erik did touch on a few things there. I mean, work lives changed, personal lives changed, and so do you find yourself having to think about, well, how is this affecting this person personally? And he mentioned, they have the flexibility to pick their kids up from school and then come back and do more work, or a situation where you're working from home and you got to come into the office to meet somebody physically. So are you going to have a space for them when they come in, because they don't have an actual space? So how did you guys think about that? And maybe from a policy perspective, I mean, you guys aren't the type of company that lobs policies all over the place, but still you have to have a framework. So how did you think about, from each person, because it seems like everybody's got maybe a different situation. How do you try and piece that together into some sort of a cohesive policy, for lack of a better term, that your company can use?
Yeah, I think first of all, when we started talking about this redesign plan, that was the number one thing we wanted to focus on, is how do we make this workspace interchangeable and work for everybody. That was number one. Designing a space that one person could use it a couple days a week, but it'd be there ready for another person to use another day of the week. So it was interchangeable, allowing people to come and go as they want. And nowadays, that work-life balance, that mental health has really been at the forefront of a lot of companies, and we're no different. So allowing our employees, like Erik said, to have that flexibility to work from home, be around their families a little bit more, being able to pick up their kids, spending time around their daily lives around things that maybe they had missed out in the past was very important. And what we are finding that it's actually making a more productive employee. It gives them the flexibility to work from home, be around there, and if they want to come in the office, they always have a spot. And they have a spot that they can be proud of. And then that kind of filtered over to on the operations side when we were thinking about this, is the people that actually physically have to be here every day due to mainly just IT challenges where they have to be physically in the office every day. We wanted to provide them a spot that they could come in every day and feel energized when they walked into the office. And this new space that we created, it's just absolutely beautiful, and it has been a home run with our staff. And so far, everybody's just super excited to get in and get to work.
I guess going forward, things are appearing like they're going to be fully open, but now you're dealing with the hybrid, even though it may be not necessary. Have you found, and I love that Brad just touched on this, do you find that you almost changed your thought process, saying, wait a second, I never thought that the hybrid or the person staying at home would be better from a productivity perspective than, hey, let's have everybody come back to the office. You need to be here to be productive. Has your mentality changed in that sense?
Absolutely. Again, I call it kind of the toothpaste is out of the tube. The idea of being productive only when you're in an office environment, why was that the case? Because you had access to the information you need, you had access to your computer, you had all those elements. Well, once you learn how to, you put those in somebody's home, in their home office, they don't, and you make it work. You don't unlearn that. Mm-hmm. Just because of, there's no pandemic anymore, you don't forget how to coordinate, diverse work, employment staff in different areas. It's set up, it's going. They have, again, we focused on making sure every employee had a place to work at home that was healthy and productive, meaning they have dedicated office space. They have desks, we bought stand-up desks for, our employees so they could, have just the same level of quality that you'd see in an office, in a regular commercial office environment, chairs, mm-hmm. Again, dual monitors, high-speed computers, networked phones, just like you'd see in the office. So really, virtually, you're in your office like you would be, your home office is your corporate office, mm-hmm. so to speak. So really, at the end of the day, if they're going to come into the office, shut their door, and grind because they're super busy and they have a workload that day and they're not going to be interacting heavily outside of their closed office doors anyways, well, why have them come into the office? Mm-hmm. Save the getting ready, half an hour commute, all that. Again, that is something that is undeniable. And again, to me, it comes with, is a company willing to invest in giving people the technology and work resources that they can work? And a lot of companies aren't, and those are the people that are probably coming back. And they may have, again, every industry is different. In tradition companies, we're not a company, we're several companies, mm-hmm. and it's all along the spectrum. So if you look at Ennebeck Construction, they do grading and earthwork, and they have to drive equipment, dump trucks, bulldozers. They're working on job sites. Mm-hmm. There's no remote work opportunity there. They're building things, so they have to be on site. Now they're corporate people who are working on computers, and that there's maybe a little bit of work flexibility there. But again, that's a tangible type of, mm-hmm. of industry where you have to be on site. And home building, you got to build the houses. You got to go out to the job sites to build the houses. You have model homes. You got to put salespeople in the houses. Less flexibility there, obviously, yeah. on what they're doing. Maybe you can change hours a little bit because of virtual tours and other things. But it's an on-site kind of universe. But then you move over into financial services where we're working in a virtual world, and you have banking, mortgage lending, wealth management, those things are done electronically a lot, and those kind of have moved towards that even prior to the pandemic. So we're fortunate. So Brad and I, who run the mortgage company, we're already kind of into that space already, so we can be a little bit more aggressive about how we handle things. But it's kind of a 3-layer cake. You have the people that want to get back and they need to get back full time, and then you have the hybrid people, kind of the A day, B day, and then you have basically full-time remote, where they're maybe only coming back for company training sessions and kind of intentional pieces. And we're moving, for me, I thought it'd be maybe 50%, 40 plus hour work weeks back in the office, and 50% A day, B day, where it's maybe 25% back in the office all the time, 50% kind of that hybrid universe, and then 25% that, again, we'll only see them maybe monthly or quarterly at training sessions. So it just kind of blows my mind how much the universe can change in 14 months. It's just amazing.
It is. And Brad, I want both your perspective on this, but I'll start with Brad. To Erik's point, he's talking about you can't unlearn, technology, for instance. And being part of marketing here with Tradition, doing a lot of video, doing a lot of things like this podcast, doing things to try and pull people in, not just clients, but our own people, bring in our own salespeople, our operations people, bring everybody together. And sometimes you have to do virtual things or share internal company education videos or things like that. But I want your perspective on the generational part of it, because from my experience, you find that some of the younger people are right on board with all of the new technology, because maybe that's what they grew up with, whereas some of the maybe more experienced people, they don't shun it, but it's just not natural, So I'm just curious about what your perspective on the generational side of all the technology and this hybrid thing and all of that.
Yeah, it's actually a fun thing to actually see right now on how that's actually working, because the one thing that we have noticed is that the older staff members, I like to call them the old sea dogs, are definitely people that are more familiar and want to be in the office. It's hard to break their habits, right? So their habits are, I'm coming in every day, this is my routine, I'm going to come in, get my work done, and leave. And then we have that other side of our generation, the younger generation, that is itching to probably work a little bit more remotely than the older staff members. So it's that balance, and that's why we did what we did. We created and invested into our employees in an environment that works for everybody. And I do think that we are starting to see some of the older staff members adapt to, like Erik had mentioned, working a little bit more remotely, enjoying it, but not wanting that every single day. And then we got the younger people and the people working at home right now that we have now created an environment that I think is very inviting for them wanting to be back in the office. And that's what we wanted to create. And for Tradition, what makes us special is the relationships, like Erik said. There's a lot of companies right now, if you read, that are challenging with the remote working and are actually looking to bring employees back. And we're actually doing the opposite. We're looking at an environment to give our employees options on what works best for them. And if you hire the right people, like Erik had mentioned, you don't have to worry about the productivity. And that's just something we've been very fortunate not to have to worry about. So at the end of the day, this investment that we made works so well for both sides, no matter if you're on the younger generation or the older generation. It's a setup that's going to work and everybody can be super productive in.
Really, at the end of the day, you have to keep the most important thing. And what that is serving the client. We don't exist if we can't fulfill the needs of the client and compete for their business effectively in the marketplace. So that's what everybody needs to remember, and we try to pound that message home in all the companies of Tradition, that we're here to serve our clients. And yes, work is work, and we want a work-life balance, and families are incredibly important, but we need to sustain the success that we've had as a group of organizations, and specifically with Tradition Mortgage, by being as responsive as possible. So the big question that we pose to people when we're looking at these different work arrangements. How are you going to continue to serve the client better than our competitor? How are we going to continue to do a better job? So what is the trade-off? If you want more flexibility, that's great, but when the client wants a pre-approval letter, the client wants to get approved, the client wants to lock a loan, are you going to be available? Who's going to be available? So that's the trade-off. So again, when people are working in these flex environments, they understand that, these business hours are business hours, and you need to be available. And that's great. And if you got a laptop and you have access to a computer and you have your phone, you can do it, and you want to be in a park or you want to be on your back deck, you want to be wherever, that's great. But at the end of the day, we have a job to do, and we can't forget that. And, we work hard here at Tradition, and we give flexibility because we have experienced people. But at the end of the day, the most important thing always has to remain the most important thing. We are here to serve our clients. And if we're going to create work environments that are going to be better for our employees' personal lives, but it comes at the cost of serving our client, that's not going to work long term. So we have that balance. So again, that's just the one thing we pose to people is that, again, being productive, being of service, being available to the customer, and you know what, we've been just blessed because our team has knocked it out of the park.
And you can't stress enough the fact that you guys as leaders have done this for a long time, but you mentioned it right off the top of the podcast. You said, hey, we're all learning this too. I mean, this isn't, there's no playbook for this. There's no, the last pandemic we did this, right? I mean, this is something where you're learning something, everyone's learning something, but it appears like you've gone the route of flexibility, of allowing people to make choices, which is empowering to them. But there's also the stipulation that, hey, we still need to be productive. We have to be productive during the times that other people are trying to be productive. So it appears like you guys have done a lot of the things that you need to do to maybe go into the brave new world, if that's what it is. And I wish you the best of luck. It's been interesting seeing how things have continued to develop, but your productivity has stayed there, and that's, I think, what every company is certainly looking for. Brad, appreciate you coming on today. Thank you very much for your time, and as always, Eric, thank you as well.
Yeah, thanks. Let's make it a goal to come back in 12 months on a podcast, and we'll talk about how things have adapted from this point forward. But it's fun to see it unfold right now, and I'm excited for the future, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
Absolutely. That's we're gonna stick with this all the way through with all the Tradition companies. Because everyone's got a little bit of a different perspective on things, but everyone's rolling forward and being productive. So that's what's important. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks.